We'll learn together. Hi, my name is Bill Pratt. I used to work at DHS, and I'll be talking about that large federal agency today. But I do have to say that I'm not officially representing DHS. I retired from the federal government back in January, and I started working about 8 hours later at my new company, this wonderful Rely Group. But I did learn a lot of lessons there at DHS. And as we talked about all these transformations that we've done today, and we learned that there's a lot of organizational challenges we have. And so we did them all because I was proud to be part of the team that actually led the Agile transformation at DHS about 10, 15 years ago now. And I wanted to talk about that and talk about some of the lessons learned and talk about some of the things we're doing today to keep the things going, or they are doing. I still say we a lot, which I'll have to break that habit. I was there 22 years. And so, and then we'll talk a little bit about the future. And I think what you'll hear, as I was sitting there today, just enthralled by all these great presentations, I was hearing common themes, and I think you'll hear a few more here as we sort of wrap it up. So let's get started. Let's see. Got it. Thank you. So, by the way, I did my Agile or my AI graphics in Copilot, which was very cool. So I just kind of whipped them in there, did it, said what I sort of wanted to get across, and it came up with those wonderful things. I did not credit them as I saw some other wonderful people doing. But in the beginning, so here's the formation of the Earth many, many years ago. So when we started doing Agile at DHS, 100% waterfall shop, it was never really terribly. If you had the money, like CVIS was the system I worked on at first back in 2002. This is pre-DHS, actually. We actually put out 3 releases a year using waterfall because it was fee-funded as the students came to the country and went to university. So we had a little bit more money than most folks who had to depend on Congress have here in the federal government, which is always a challenge. And we did it okay. We did 3 releases a year. When the 2012 OMB mandate came out for modular IT development, it said you have to put out usable functionality within 6 months. We're like, got this. We're doing this already with CVIS. That's 4 months at a shot. But of course, nobody else was sort of at that level, except for USCIS, Rob and his contemporaries back in the day. But we tried initially. And I was at ICE back in these days. I was at INS, and then DHS was stood up. I stayed at ICE until 13 when I went to headquarters. But we had pockets of excellence around the agency. People trying it, USCIS among them, ICE among them. We were trying some stuff. So trying to grow it organically just wasn't sort of working from an overall organizational perspective. So then we said, well, let's go top down, which kind of was weird. And we debated about how to do this, but we actually did decide to mandate Agile development at DHS if you were building software. Now, this is before we wanted to use Agile techniques for everything else. So we wrote a policy in 2014, and it took 2 years of us road showing it. And every time you write a policy, I don't know if you folks are aware how the government works, it's almost like a congressional hold on a candidate. Every single CIO of a major organization has to sign off on it, and their respective organizations need to sign off on it. So we wrote the policy in 2014. It took us until the summer of 2016 to get it through DHS and get it signed. But once it was great because it gave us 2 years to roadshow it. So by the time it came out and we said, hey guys, you've got 6 months to show us your plan for going Agile or show us that you are Agile, nobody's hair was on fire and they didn't flip out. So it actually worked out pretty good. We did write the policy to fit within the acquisition lifecycle framework ecosystem at DHS. We have a big acquisition process that was, based on the FAR. We call it the D102 instruction there at DHS. So we wrote it within that, so we were Agile within that. And one of the early things we did, which we found out very quickly was an anti-pattern, is we tried to fit the old SDLC. We tried to fit Agile into the old SDLC. So we tried to map up which Agile ceremonies would kind of fit which SDLC gates. We did that for about 6 months and then said, to heck with it. And it was USCIS Ellis was the very first major program at DHS where we just said, screw it. If you're going to be Agile, go be Agile, and 100% Agile. So we had these SDLC tailoring plans we'd write for some of these programs and try to authorize them to be Agile back then, because it wasn't in alignment with the policy until that new policy came out. And so that went out great. So the one thing we did, though, back in the day, we had to go out there. And one of the lessons I'm trying to share today is communication, right? You cannot over-communicate. So a very heavily federated agency, DHS, I got with my executive, Carlina Leto. She's amazing. She's still a CBP today. We got in her black sedan, and we drove to every single CIO of a major component. And we sat down with the CIO, and I had ghost-written a memo for them and sat down with them and say, sir, ma'am, we are here to try to transform this agency. Would love to have, and explain to them what we're doing. I'd love to have your support. And it gave them a ghost-written memo, which they could edit to their, to their heart's content, and then send it to their folks. And everyone to a person said, yes, let's do that, which was great. We also went to all the chief acquisition executives, because those are the folks who kind of support the FAR, and they manage all of the acquisition across the agency. So they knew what we were doing as well. Now we published that guidance, and we started measuring folks. So we went out 2 or 3 times across the agency, said, hey, are you doing this? And I'll talk a little bit about, I'll talk about this next. So the way we measured it is we did a very, very rudimentary measurement at the time. We called the Agile building blocks. Because one of the challenges was Agile was so fresh, so new, with this completely new vocabulary. Nobody knew what a ceremony was. Literally, I thought myself, I said, so after your first, to show team camaraderie, do we celebrate after we get a release out? Is that what a ceremony? No, of course it's not. And so the folks I talked to at the time told me, well, it was such a break from the way we did it in the past, they needed a whole new vocabulary. That was all great if you went to the Agile, events. If you were a grizzled old IT program manager like I was, and by the way, I was the guy who managed the SDLC and did everything wrong. I was so perfect at getting the waterfall right. But that was not the right thing. It was getting that thing right? But none of these IT program managers across DHS had any idea what we meant by ceremonies and all the new terms for Agile. So what we did is we created what we called the Agile building blocks. We said, look, if you can do 5 or 10 of these 10 things, or 5 or 7 of these 10 things, you're essentially Agile. We thought about it's like, a parent riding behind a kid with their bike, right? After a while, the kid doesn't know that the parents let go and they're actually riding. So that's what our thought was. And so the Agile building blocks, and I won't go through them all, but it was like, get your business owner involved. Some of these guys were like the business owners or product owners, if you will. They would like, dude, I signed off on the requirements, which by the way were like 500 to 1,000 of them perhaps, before you even wrote a line of code. They said, I signed off on it, man. I got a day job. I'll see you guys in like 6 months to a year, come back with my thing. Which of course, as you're developing, you start to see, divert from what the original wireframes were, and you come back and the guy's like, well, dude, where's my stuff? That's not what we talked about. And so obviously, as we all know now, you gotta get them involved. But there was a huge pushback by the product owner community back then. Nobody wanted to partner on this. And the other thing is get your developer and your tester sitting side by side. Very simple things. I was a quality assurance tester for years. So we did these 10 Agile building blocks. And eventually, the last couple were DevOps and scaling. We had one for get your contracting involved, which actually got solved way faster than I thought it would. That gave us very easy 10 things to measure for every program, for every component, and then all the way up to DHS. And so it gave us like a sense of not only where the weaknesses were, but also, and we knew no one was going to do DevOps right away or scaling right away. That was something we knew we were going to have 100% right away. But that gave us a healthy way to not only sort of measure what we're doing, but also explain to these ITPMs what we're actually talking about. And so by December 2017, we published in the summer of 16 the instruction. By December of 2017, we had 100% compliance for our major IT acquisitions, for developing at least in using Agile. So we were pretty happy about that. There we go. So I love this picture. This was our team taking all the acquisition lifecycle framework documents we had to align with, stick them on a wall, and it looks like one of those conspiracy movies, because what it was is, they took a piece of yarn and some yellow highlighter, and everywhere there's a conflicting statement from one document to the next that told you what you had to do, that's what they identified. And this was at 650 Massachusetts Avenue. We walked every executive involved with any kind of IT acquisition through that space and took a look at this picture. And that was probably, that wall was more effective than probably anything we ever did. But we did in the mid-teens, so we were already developing in an agile manner. We had the agile instruction delivered. By the way, the first major agency in the world to have said, we're gonna go do agile. And we got, DHS got a lot of press about that. But then the Undersecretary for Management said, you know, I'm reading all these GAO reports, and we're spending millions and sometimes billions, and 5 years later, nothing's happening, nothing's working. So he said, listen, I want you guys to pick 5 pilots, and I want you to throw the rule book out. You pick me 5 major programs here at DHS, and some that are troubled, some that were not. E-Verify was one of the ones that was not. There was others that were troubled at the time. And he said, throw the rule book out, and he signed a memo that says, I authorize you to do whatever you need to do to get these things through to the point where you can start delivering. And we did that. We learned 18 specific processes that we thought needed to be fixed, and we tackled them. And so he approved that. I'm really shortening this. This could take forever. It was many years. But we got that done in 2019. We actually got those programs way further than they would have been without direct involvement. But then the things we learned, you know, starting with program 6 to infinity, we are all following those processes, and it really was great. But, you know, talking about partnership and communication, once again, we met with every chief executive officer at DHS headquarters. The chief procurement officer had to sign off, the chief financial officer had to sign off, science and technology director lead, everybody that sits around the table with the Undersecretary for Management, and at DHS, that's the way it works. We have the Secretary of the USM, and then the CIOs and folks like that. And they all signed off. They did it. I wrote a big white paper. Here's what we're going to do. They all signed it, and away we went. So by 2019, we got that done. And it really substantially streamlined our process going forward. Now we're going to make additional changes. But it took some time. I was the lead kind of monkey in the middle there at the staff level. I've been there a long, long time, and I think that this is one of the things I'll take away. This thing takes time, especially in the government where you do not get the money to invest when you think you need to invest it. I would go every single year, put a budget up, go in front of the CIO to defend it. Sometimes I didn't even get to the CIO. Sometimes my immediate boss said, nah, not this year. And then, you know, I have to say, I'd never, ever got the extended money that I thought we would, with the exception of this Agile transformation. That went well. But that's the challenge in the federal government. For you folks in the industry may not realize, we get whatever Congress trickles out to us. We have to do the very best we can, and so it's like minimal little changes until we can get things going. The one benefit I did have is I was there so doggone long, and especially about the same role. So as my new execs came and my new execs went, and about every 2 to 3 years they change out, and then you have to explain to those folks, you know, everybody, all the new execs come in with 3 to 5 big things they want to do. And oh man, I got like 40, 50 people, I got this. They're gonna tear it up and change the world. We'll say, yes, ma'am, or sir, you know, we by law, half your people do this, and that occupies their time every day. And oh, by the way, we're doing these other things. And I come in and say, yeah, we're sort of been doing this Agile thing for a bunch of years, and you know, we can't just turn on a dime and go away from that. We've made tons of investment. So as the thing's saying, I think it's like 8 CIOs, 3 undersecretaries for management, 5 CTOs, and that's who I reported to directly. Eventually, unique among agencies, they moved oversight underneath the CTO so we could align our governance with the emerging tech as they came out. But we got it done, and they're still doing it now. You know, Congress heard about, so the fabulous DC press, I was out chatting somewhere about it, and the press caught it, you know, put it in the paper, and then Congress said, hey, that's interesting. Why don't you guys come down here and brief us on what we're doing? So it was congressional staff, not, you know, it wasn't being grilled on the Hill itself, although we prepped many of my leaders to do that. But anyway, that's the thing. The one thing the one takeaway here is you got to keep communicating. You got to brief your execs, and they are going to have other things they want to do. Hopefully, it aligns. I mean, everyone wants better IT, but you do have to keep it aligned. And then we undertook DevOps. That was the next big thing. That was one of our last building blocks, DevOps and scaling. And I'm happy to say that that's underway and doing really well at the headquarters. And but again, senior level top cover is critical. I was the staff level guy that was there forever, and the undersecretary for management was there for quite a long time, a gentleman named Chip Fulgham, super guy. He's down in Texas doing amazing things at a new organization. But I have to say that not all the execs were really into sticking around doing this thing for so long, right, after they'd sort of had some initial wins. But he was very adamant that we were going to finish this, and he was very kind to let me keep doing it. So then we transitioned. So at headquarters, this is sort of what we're doing now. So we went from where we were, this is where we're going in the future. We did build at headquarters a CI/CD pipeline for DevOps. All the bigs already had it, USCIS, ICE, they were well ahead of us. They have way more money than headquarters and way more money and expertise than most of the components. But the others were catching up pretty well. But at headquarters, there's 18 smaller components and offices at DHS outside of the big 8 that you always hear about. That they really depend on headquarters quite a lot to get things going, as they just don't have the size, the funding, the staffing. So we finally did build a CI/CD pipeline these last couple of years, and we're now onboarding those folks, and that's going very well. This year, we've talked a lot about this today, but reimagining Agile. We've got our partnership with the deputy exec in the acquisition space. He's all in, and the CTO is all in. We're going to actually dive in again and try to do Agile without, the constraints of the overall acquisition framework, which is very good. We're changing our metrics. First metrics we did for Agile were pretty much to show compliance with being Agile. Now we're changing those to show value. The one thing I will tell you is I was surprised to find out a senior leader, I won't mention the person or the role, but this was December of 23, and I found out he's like, what's this Agile thing? What? Why do I have to keep doing thousands of requirements up front? I'm like, dude, you didn't get the memo? What's going on here? So I didn't really say that in front of him in this meeting, but what that told me is, and I went back immediately to my staff and said, guys, it's not one and done, right? We have to continually go out there and educate this. Even all the people we think have it, you got to keep that going. So another takeaway. And then we're also building a black belt problem. We have a problem with enough money in the government overall, but we're building a cohort of black belts. We have what they call grandmasters. That fell out of his favor. Now they're calling him something else. Although we talked about grandmasters yesterday for Kaggle in the data realm. But sort of train the trainers so we can have people embedded at each component that can sort of help their peers, because unfortunately not everybody has the money to bring in the help. And then we did some cool things like we did an experiment where I took everybody's performance plan for the year and we put it in Jira. So you didn't just write your performance plan, stick them on the shelf, and then everybody flipped out 2 months before you were supposed to be rated on them. So we did them as stand-ups, which was pretty cool. Interim stuff. So we talked about this a lot today. AI is going to infuse everything. I've chatted about it as we had our working session. I think taking the mundane tasks away is going to be what's going to help. And I actually did this literally while I was putting this deck together. I said, let me take a shot and do this. I said, here's the very last, I won't go through the whole thing, but this is what I wrote into the chat GPT. I said, hey, basically, here's a use case. Here's what I want as an end state. Show me if you can do that. And I know we're running a little late, so I'm moving along. So I'm not going to read through all this. But the bottom line is it did it. It took, whatever I did, like a paragraph there. It came out with 6 terrific use cases with stuff that I wouldn't have thought to put in there off the top of my head, each of which had 4 or 5 really great acceptance criteria. On my backup slides here, the last couple, which are available for takeaway, I actually list exactly what the output was. And it just showed, and that was just like a lark. It came to me as fast as the internet connection would let it come back down. and it was just really amazing. And so what my thought is holy cow, the thing that really I've been doing for like 20 years now, many of us have, trying to teach people how to do a user story right, try to teach people how to write user acceptance criteria, how to teach people to get it into Jira, and then which tickets to pull to get with your product owner, what do I pull to do this next thing? I think the AI is likely there because all the rules, it's been crowdsourced since what, up to 2021 at least, and it's going to be continually being updated. We know how to do Jira. Lots of people around the world know how to do Jira. I meant to say Agile. So why don't we just tell it what we want it to do and then review the results and to see how that works. This worked beautifully for this one small use case. I can't wait to try it on some other stuff. The other thing we really need to do is, and so I think that actually goes into maybe determining what to pull out of a backlog if you have a certain output you expect. I'd love to do more experimentation on this just to see what the heck is out there in GPT land. The other thing is we got to fix the end state. The one thing we didn't really get to is the end of the acquisition lifecycle, what they call O&M, or operations and maintenance, or sustainment. That is still out there. We're still spending 80% of IT spend on that stuff. We've still got a lot of mainframes. Congress is knocking on every agency's door every year saying, what's up, dudes? Why aren't we turning anything off? That's a big thing we have to tackle. Looking forward to doing a little bit more on that. But really, I heard this actually, I think, from Mark Schwartz, perhaps, in a recent online thing. So why are we worried about the 80%? That's the way we should be doing. We should be just continually, we should be just continually updating that. And this 20% that we set aside is this, dedicated development. Maybe that's what we need to look at. So really interested to take a look at that. And then finally, I think we need to just follow that through until we can go into a DevOps world that we need to go into. So I don't know, we've got a couple seconds left. I'll take any questions. By the way, this shows you, I take pictures of all my whiteboards, which was awesome. So this is the initial whiteboard for the Agile building blocks, which I love, and initial whiteboard for like SELC versus Agile and how we thought we would do it way, way back in the day. That was many, many moons ago. Anyway, I'll take any questions, or if you guys want to throw some candy. And there's a couple Twix. I only have 4 Twix I can retaliate with, so be kind.
Raj, Molly's got a question back there.
Molly was my co-conspirator early on in this stuff.
Well, and actually you stole my comment. So I wanted to say that it's really neat to sit in a presentation by you, because I was so reluctant and angry with you in 2017, having to learn user stories and journeys and all that stuff. I'm sure we had tough conversations from it, but I am in this room, and now I'm a certified value management practitioner because of you, and with LitheSpeed, because I met these guys through you as well. So it's really neat to see and to attend a presentation by somebody who really does walk the talk. So
thank you, Molly. Woo-hoo. She's tough. How could I go? We did this amazing SWOT analysis way back for CTO, and not all of it's done yet, but we identified it all, which was pretty cool.
Any other questions for Bill?
All right, I know I'm staying between you. One awesome presenter, and then happy hour, guys, so I can't wait to catch up. All right, so I'm gonna go to the next slide. So this is me. Please contact me. I got cards, and I'm on LinkedIn. I would love to chat with you more and learn some more. I've learned so much today. Really appreciate y'all. All right, thanks, bye. Hey.